My boyfriend thinks my colleague is a perfect 10, and I can't let it go. I am a 25-year-old and my boyfriend John is 26 years old. The two of us met while we were at university during our bachelor's degree. Back then he was in a relationship with someone else, which lasted until the final year of his studies. About 6 months after his previous relationship ended, we started dating. Since then, I can honestly say I have never experienced this level of happiness in a relationship before. Everything between us feels effortless, and we seem to be perfectly aligned when it comes to our goals, values, and plans for the future. Whether it's discussing career aspirations, family plans, or where we see ourselves living, it always feels like we are on the same wavelength, and that kind of compatibility is something I truly cherish. Being with him has brought a sense of joy and stability to my life that I hadn't encountered in my previous relationships. Despite this, I sometimes find myself questioning if I am behaving in a silly or overly idealistic way. I wonder if my feelings and reactions are justified given how long we have been together. It has been a while now since we started dating, and our relationship has only grown stronger, yet there's this lingering thought in the back of my mind that perhaps I should seek an outside perspective to better understand where I stand and whether my emotions are grounded in reality. This conversation took place almost 2 years ago. At the time, we weren't officially a couple yet, but we had been dating for a while and had decided to take our first vacation together. During one of our conversations, we began talking about appearances in general. At some point, as a lighthearted game, he asked me to rate myself on a scale from 1 to 10. After answering him, I turned the question back on him. Then, to keep the game going, he asked me who I thought would be considered a 10. For me, the concept of someone being a 10 has always been associated with celebrities. I've always thought that the only people who qualify as 10s are those who are professionally groomed, paid to look good, and often benefit from things like professional styling, makeup, and even tools like Photoshop. So, I casually mentioned 1 or 2 celebrities as my answer. Naturally, I asked him the same question in return, curious about his perspective. His response caught me off guard when he said, "Well, I think Julie is a definite 10. My heart sank in that moment. Julie was a fellow student in our class at university. I didn't know her particularly well. We had shared a few conversations over the years, but she wasn't someone I had much interaction with. She rarely participated in after-class activities or social events, so I hadn't thought of her as being central to our social circle. What made his comment even more jarring was the fact that, prior to this, I had noticed him expressing some irritation or disappointment about her lack of involvement in social activities. To hear him rate her as a 10, a standard he hadn't attributed to anyone else in our conversation, stirred an uncomfortable mix of emotions in me. Despite the sinking feeling, I reminded myself of my desire to approach situations with as little drama and as much logical reasoning as possible. So, rather than reacting emotionally, I calmly said that I agreed Julie was good-looking. Even though I managed to keep my response composed, the comment lingered in my mind. It nagged at me in the days and weeks that followed, leaving me to wrestle with whether or not I should bring it up again or just let it go. Ultimately, I decided to try to ignore the thought as best as I could. I reasoned that there were only a few months left until the end of the semester, and everyone, including Julie, would soon be finishing their degrees and moving on to new chapters in life. Still, the comment stayed in the back of my mind, becoming one of those unresolved moments that I tried not to dwell on but couldn't entirely forget. In the fall, I started an amazing job that I was incredibly excited about. When I initially applied, there were 2 open positions available, and as fate would have it, the other position was filled by none other than Julie. Yes, Julie, the same Julie my boyfriend had once referred to as a definite 10. So now, not only do I see her occasionally, but I see her every single day because we are colleagues. To be fair, Julie is nice and we get along quite well. She's friendly, professional, and easy to work with. There's no tension or animosity between us on the surface. However, the fact that I have to see her every day inevitably leads to me comparing myself to her, even though I know it's unhealthy and unnecessary. No matter how much I tell myself not to, I end up scrutinizing our differences, questioning my own worth, and feeling an annoying twinge of self-doubt. It's frustrating, and I'm equally annoyed at myself for letting this comparison take up space in my mind. What's worse is that, despite my best efforts to move on, the comment my boyfriend made years ago continues to resurface. It doesn't happen all the time, but around 2 to 4 times a month I'll be lying in bed, and the memory of him calling Julie a perfect 10 will suddenly pop into my head. Each time, my heart sinks and the same familiar wave of insecurity washes over me. I keep trying to push it away, rationalize it, or tell myself it doesn't matter, but the thought stubbornly lingers. A few months ago, after a few drinks, actually more than a few drinks, and in the middle of our first real argument about something unrelated, I finally decided to bring it up. The topic we were discussing had nothing to do with Julie, but it was tangentially related in a way that made me feel like this was the moment to air my feelings. I started cautiously, saying something along the lines of, "I know this might be stupid to bring up, and I realize there isn't really anything you can do about it, but it's been bothering me." I went on to explain exactly what had been eating at me for so long. The comment he had made about Julie, how it made me feel, and how it still occasionally affected me. When I finished, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Well, I can't do anything about that. I think Julie is the perfect 10. That response hit me hard. It wasn't just the words themselves but the tone and the lack of reassurance that made it feel like a knife twisting in an already sore wound. Let's just say that conversation didn't resolve anything or make me feel better. Instead, it added another layer of discomfort to an already complicated and lingering issue. So, I've obviously spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I've come to the conclusion that one of the main reasons this situation has been nagging at me as much as it has is that I've never been someone who focuses too much on looks. Growing up, I was surrounded by people who placed a significant amount of importance on their appearance. They would spend a lot of time and effort on their makeup, clothing, and general presentation. I, on the other hand, have always taken pride in being more casual and low maintenance in this regard. I do my makeup in about 5 minutes and usually just throw on whatever clothes feel comfortable without overthinking it. It's not that I don't care about looking presentable, but I've never let it consume me or become a central part of my identity. This attitude toward appearance has always been a positive thing for me, but it feels a little complicated now because John, my boyfriend, does care about looks. It's not something he's shy about, and while it's not inherently a bad thing, it's made me more conscious of the differences in how we value physical appearance. On top of that, this is the first relationship I've been in where I'm genuinely afraid that I might be the one with stronger feelings. That fear has been difficult to navigate because it creates this subtle but persistent sense of insecurity that I can't seem to shake. What makes it even harder is that, early in our relationship, I had to push for us to become official. John didn't initially see the importance of labeling our relationship, which made me question where I stood in his life. He felt it was too soon to make things official because his previous relationship had only ended a short time before we started dating. While I understood his reasoning, it left me feeling a bit unsure about how seriously he viewed our relationship compared to how I felt about him. All of these factors combined, the comment about Julie, my insecurities about our differences in how we value appearance, and my fear of having stronger feelings, have made this situation harder for me to process. And now, as I sit with all of these thoughts swirling around in my head, I'm turning to you, kind people of Reddit, to ask for advice. How do I move past this? How do I handle it in a healthier and more productive way than I've been managing so far? Any insights, suggestions, or perspectives would be greatly appreciated because, right now, I feel like I'm just going in circles with no clear path forward. She edited this post. Just to make this clear, I fully agree that the entire rating system is immature and not something I would typically engage in or even condone. However, I want to clarify one very important point, especially for those suggesting that I should leave him over this incident. What you are reading right now is the single worst thing that has happened during our relationship. That, in itself, I believe is a strong indication that we have a genuinely great relationship overall. While I acknowledge that his comment about Julie was thoughtless and insensitive, it is not emblematic of our entire relationship, which has otherwise been overwhelmingly positive and fulfilling. At this point, I recognize that the way I've been holding on to this and allowing it to linger is really more of a personal issue. I've received some incredibly insightful advice and thoughtful observations from the comments so far, and I'm doing my best to reply to some of them because I genuinely appreciate the time and effort people are putting into offering their perspectives. Edit 2. I've noticed that quite a few people are commenting on the timing of when I chose to bring up this issue, and I realize it may seem like a random or poorly chosen moment. So, I feel like I should explain why it felt connected to the conversation we were having at the time. As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons I've been fixated on this issue is because John cares about appearances, particularly when it comes to clothing. To clarify, it's not a shallow preoccupation with looks but rather a genuine passion for fashion. While this isn't an interest I share, I've learned a great deal about it during our time together, and I respect the fact that it matters to him. The timing of the conversation stems from an incident that happened earlier that day. We were meeting a couple who were friends of his for the first time, and I was stepping out of the shower to get ready. As I was getting dressed, John casually mentioned that I should mind what I was putting on and remember that they care about fashion too. The comment struck a nerve with me because he knows that fashion isn't something I prioritize, and it made me feel as though I wasn't enough or that I had to conform to someone else's expectations to make a good impression. The remark honestly pissed me off and left me feeling frustrated and less than. When we got home later that evening, the lingering irritation from his comment, combined with my feelings about the Julie incident, made me feel like this was the right time to bring it up. I realize now that the timing wasn't ideal, especially since tensions were already high from our earlier discussion. But in the moment, it felt connected and I couldn't hold back any longer. Looking back, I see how it could have been handled differently, but at the time, it felt like a natural extension of what we were already talking about. She posted an update after 5 years means this year update was, "Hi everyone. I absolutely love updates, so I figured it's only fair that I give one myself, especially since this was my only popular post. Instead of just continuing my usual lurking, I wanted to share where things stand now. It's been a while since all of this happened, about 5 years to be exact, so some of the finer details are a bit hard to recall, but the key moments still stick out clearly. At some point after I made the original post, we had a major blowout about the situation. It wasn't something I had planned or wanted to escalate, but things came to a head when he pushed the issue after I had repeatedly told him that I didn't want to talk about it. I was already frustrated, and when he wouldn't let it go, I finally snapped. In the heat of the moment, I ended up laying everything out. I told him exactly how mean his comment was, specifically the later one where he said, "Well, I can't do anything about that. I think Julie is the perfect 10. I didn't hold back in explaining how insecure and hurt those words had made me feel, both in the moment and in the time since. To his credit, once I had fully expressed how much it had affected me, he realized just how unnecessary and hurtful his comment had been. He apologized sincerely, and I could tell he genuinely meant it. That moment of acknowledgement and understanding helped a lot in beginning to mend how I felt about the situation. Looking back now, I think that confrontation was an important turning point for both of us. It forced us to address an issue that had been simmering under the surface for far too long, and it helped us learn to communicate more openly and effectively about things that matter, even when they're difficult or uncomfortable to talk about. While it wasn't easy at the time, I believe it ultimately strengthened our relationship and brought us closer together. I hope this update helps provide some closure for anyone who followed my original post. Thank you again to everyone who took the time to comment and offer advice. It was genuinely appreciated and played a role in helping me process everything. However, after the confrontation, I ended up falling into a bit of a funk for a couple of days. This was partly due to the emotional weight of the confrontation itself, but also influenced by some of the harsh comments on my original post. While I understand that people were trying to offer their perspectives, some of the responses were quite critical, which made me second-guess myself and my feelings about the entire situation. For about 3 days I was quieter and more subdued than usual, and it was clear that something was off. He noticed my change in mood and became incredibly worried. After those 3 days, he apologized profusely for everything. He acknowledged his role in what had happened and told me that he would actively work on improving himself, especially in areas like his stubbornness, his approach to communication, and his ability to express compliments and appreciation toward me. During that conversation, he also explained that part of the issue stemmed from the way he had communicated in his previous relationship. With his ex, they had a dynamic where disagreements often turned into a battle of wills, with both of them digging deeper into their positions rather than trying to resolve things constructively. He admitted that some of that behavior had carried over into his interactions with me, and he committed to doing better. I'm happy to say that his words weren't empty promises. He truly did work on himself and improved significantly. While he is still stubborn at times and can occasionally go on the offense during disagreements, the overall progress he has made has been remarkable. He has become much more open and thoughtful in his communication, and he's far better at recognizing when he's being defensive or dismissive. Over time, these changes have helped us grow stronger as a couple. Fast forward to today, and I can confidently say that we are in a very good place. We are now married. He proposed, which was a beautiful and heartfelt moment, and we have a 1.5-year-old son who has brought so much joy into our lives. Despite the ups and downs, we are happy together and have built a life that we are both deeply grateful for. Interestingly, this situation still stands out as one of the biggest arguments we've had to date. While it was challenging at the time, I see it as a pivotal moment in our relationship. It forced us to confront issues that needed addressing and taught us valuable lessons about communication, understanding, and growth. Looking back, I'm proud of how far we've come since then and how we've both put in the effort to create a strong, loving partnership. Side note, I changed jobs, but so did Julie, and we ended up at the same firm, again. So we are still colleagues, but there are thousands plus people at our office, so I don't see her as much nowadays. I still catch myself interested in what she posts on SM, but that's about it. I rarely think about her or this situation. Let's read some comments. First comment was, I admire your sentiments assuming they are how you truly feel, but I don't think they are that common or realistic. I suspect that looks are not the most important thing in the world for most people once they reach maturity in choosing a long-term partner. But they remain integral to sexual attraction, at least for men if not universally. IMO most people would prioritize qualities such as kindness and loyalty over looks while at the same time requiring a certain degree of looks to maintain a base level of attraction. This is a big part of why it's very uncommon to see large age gap relationships, e.g. a 40-year-old woman with a 20-year-old man, and invariably when you do see such a relationship the woman looks very youthful for her age. If it was just about personality IMO this would be much more common and you would see young men marrying grannies right and left. If love was really so blind that your emotional attachment to someone completely overrode the physical reality of their appearance, then no one would care if their partners gained huge amounts of weight, but in fact it's very common for separation to occur when this happens. This may speak to the degree of love, i.e. those people did not really love their spouse, but I think most people would admit that they would find their spouse less attractive if they gained a lot of weight. Yes, you find someone more attractive when you love them, but it does not override the base reality of their physical characteristics IMO for most people. Again, that is why it is widely conceded that the first flush of romantic attraction disappears after 7 years. If it was just about personality and attachment you would actually find them more and more sexy over time. Rather, the attraction normally declines but people accept it because other things are more important. Most do find young celebrities more physically attractive than their 65-year-old wives, especially since the personality of the former is just a cipher. Otherwise porn would consist of a list of qualities and remarks ostensibly from that porn star so that people can get their rocks off to her personality. Second comment was, usually because truth matters. And your example is why there is a huge disagreement between the sexes. When men are asked to rate a woman 1 to 10 we are only thinking about physically, whereas women will throw in a bunch of nonsensical factors into the rating when the rating is based on physical attributes. Your comment about your friends thinking someone is a 10, and then you're saying their types are boring as a piece of white bread, which indicates being boring but not physically unattractive, is what brought down the score. So, I guess all the married people won't find literal celebrities and actors/actresses more attractive? Or are you saying they should lie when asked? How about when they're 60? Obviously the young new hot celebrity is more attractive. I think my point is that couples shouldn't ask questions they don't want answers from, especially if they're expecting their partners to lie about it. Then again, I found that lying to your spouse sometimes yields better results, but we're always taught to be honest with your spouse, but I guess some lying is okay as long as you deem it doesn't hurt your spouse's feelings. Fourth comment was, you are intentionally conflating two different things. From her post we know two negative traits about OP's husband. 1. Calling another woman a 10 out of 10 in front of him, and not a celebrity but someone in her life. 2. Being stubborn and defensive when they disagree and going on the offensive. Most people agree one is indefensible. OP's husband apologized and she accepted the apology and forgave him. Yeah, 2 isn't a great trait, but is anyone really saying having a stubborn partner is pathetic? Like maybe he has those traits still but is working on them. You don't know he hasn't improved on them, you are just making assumptions. And what about all the great things he brings into the relationship? Do those matter before you judge someone pathetic? And there isn't a direct link between number 1 and number 2. The fact that OP's husband hasn't solved his problem on number 2 doesn't somehow invalidate his apology on number 1. The point is, you think, I assume, that number 1 is unforgivable, which is fine, but OP doesn't. And when called you out that OP was able to move past this transgression and is happy, you change the goalpost so you can continue to call OP pathetic. I'd honestly say the pathetic one here is you, as you seem so bent on judging OP as pathetic when she states clearly in her post they are happy together. And to be clear, in OP's shoes I would have dumped my so. But I'm not her and I can appreciate that. Thank you for listening the story to the end. If you enjoy our videos, so don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a good day, and if you haven't subscribed yet please do it and hit the notification bell icon to stay updated with more shocking real life stories happening around you.